Welcome back to the Greater Greener Georgia podcast, where we dive into the environmental challenges and solutions shaping our future. Today, we're speaking with Georgia State Representative Kim Schofield from District 63, covering environmental issues, her political background, and her future plans.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. It's always a fun time when I get to share with great people on the things that we're needed in Georgia, and also share with your audience on how they can become part of the solution and not just complain about the problems.
Come on.
I'm State Representative Kim Schofield, and I represent the District 63, which actually is Fulton County. So I start, if you know Georgia, I start on Moreland Avenue and I go straight down to Union City. And one of the things I love is that I have the best airport in the world, Hartsfield-Jackson. Not only the most efficient and effective, but it's just a great group of people, staff, and customer service in our airport that we move so many large volumes effectively. So I'm honored to be here. I've been serving since 2017 in the House of Representatives, and I love what I do for my family. They're not constituents, we're family.
Absolutely. I love that. Speaking about the airport, do you have pre-check?
Of course I have pre-check.
Pre-check.
If you don't have pre-check, then you don't have nothing.
I have pre-check and global entry.
Yes,
That's when
yes.
you're an international girl.
You see, when you have a vision and there is a calling on your life, you get global. You don't get, I like to call it glocal. I'm local and global. Glocal.
Glocal. We need that go across the screen. Glocal. So we always start the podcast off with a fun question, something that has to do with where you're from, your community. So what's your favorite thing to eat in your district, or favorite restaurant, place that you frequent, and what do you order there?
Oh my gosh, so I do love food, and beyond me loving foods, my thighs and one of my stomachs like food. My favorite place to eat is in College Park, the Breakfast Boys.
Ooh. I heard they have like a line outside, like every.
Yes.
I've been wanting to go. Okay, what do you get?
So I get so first of all, they have the best basil lemonade. Basil tea.
Yeah.
That you can imagine. I don't know what the secret is of that, but I want to get a gallon. But I always get the breakfast bowl. And I have their grits are amazing. You know, if they're catfish, there's nothing on the menu that's wrong. And everybody that visits me, they have to go to College Park. And we have to have breakfast at the Breakfast Boys.
The Breakfast Boys.
And they're not only a small business, but they're also from New Jersey. They've got multiple locations. And I'm born and raised in New York, and I lived in New Jersey, and I've lived in Boston. But I get to stay in Georgia because I absolutely love sweet tea. So that's the only reason why they let me stay.
And that is so weird. I have a lot of Northern family, so it's very weird for them. They're from the South, so they like sweet tea. But you know, when you go to the North, there's no sweet tea. Also out West, there's no sweet tea. It's just in the South. We are the people with the sweet tea, and I'm a huge sweet tea girl, so it always hurts my heart when I have to travel up north. And they're like, iced tea, raspberry tea. And I'm like, no.
You have a gallon of sugar at the bottom that never dissolves. You're like, what? No, I'm going home. How quickly can I get out of here and get back to sweet tea?
I need a diabetic.
I need that diabetic fix. Priorities.
So speaking of just New York and where you're from and moving down to the South, what inspired you to get into politics, and what have been the most defining moments of your time representing in the 63rd District? And then in your political journey just in general. Yeah.
So how I became into this space as a policymaker, in 2000 I was diagnosed with lupus. And my daughter was 8 years old, and I was really given a sentence when I looked on the internet as a death sentence. It wasn't a lot of things or people, resources known about lupus. And immediately when I got diagnosed, within 3 months, my job let me go and told me I didn't look sick. And so that was a challenge because I lost my health insurance. I lost the ability to make a living. I was in a space where I'd worked the American dream. I had my house, was in my house for 2 years.
Yeah.
I had a car. My daughter was in Christian private school. So we weren't living above. I was active in my church, but what happened was I got sick. And within a year, I exhausted all of my savings, all of my retirement to kind of keep things moving along. And I realized at that point, not only is lupus a disease that people didn't know about, but the challenges to getting health care. I was denied disability 4 times. I was very, very sick.
Yeah.
And there was just seemed no hope. And so I said, rather than sit here and complain, what are you going to do? So I put my story in the newspaper and asked people if you knew about lupus, lived with lupus, caregiving, to come meet me. And 65 people showed up at the first meeting in DeKalb County. And we're still together as a lupus group, a lupus advocacy group and support group. And I align with the Georgia chapter of the Lupus Foundation. And after doing that work, Mia, for about 8 years, and we were doing education, awareness, doing great things amongst the state, what I said to them is, I'm about to do something really radical.
Right.
I'm going to call down to the Capitol, and I'm going to talk to everybody and find out what they know about lupus. And so I called, and the first couple of people that I called and times I called, I was left on hold, I was disconnected, and now I understand how that whole climate works when you try to reach somebody that's down at the Capitol.
Yeah, yeah.
So I got up, and I was in pain, but I went down and I walked the halls, and everybody that had a badge on, like this badge, I said, reached my hand out, and I said, hey, I'm Kim Schofield, I called your office, I was left on hold, I don't know what happened, but I'd love to talk to you about lupus. And I started coming back and I started building relationships. And as I started building the relationships, advocating for people with healthcare challenges and staying in the workforce and housing, I started making more connections and worked on things like the Family Care Act so that people who were caring for a loved one didn't have to use their personal sick days to take them to the doctor or miss out on things that they had to do. And I started building those relationships. It didn't make a difference if you were Republican or Democrat, independent. What it was that there was a real need.
Right.
And I did that through, again, my experience with lupus. It's my 25th year of living with lupus, but it was the fact that after 8 years of going down, talking, and just being consistent and showing up, what happened and bringing more people to tell their stories, the information and the desire to know more about lupus became a reality.
Right.
So in 2017, I was asked to run for a state office in the House because another legislator was running for a higher office, a different office.
Yeah.
And because of the relationships and the work that I had done in the space of healthcare and health advocacy, women sometimes have to be asked 7 times before they consider running.
Yeah.
Whereas a man, you ask them one time, they don't even have to know what situation. Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I was at the beach and I was sitting there praying and asking God, my life is good. I'm in a sweet spot, but what's next? I don't want to miss you. And 30 minutes later is when I got the call from my senator asking me to run for office. And at first, I said, no, Lord, I can't do this because of, there are just too many obstacles and this, and I'm a single mom and and, at some point I have lupus. At some point, I just felt a peace that came over me that said, you're not doing this alone.
Yeah.
And that you're going to be a champion for others that are scared to speak up and step up. Right. And so I came into this space knowing that this was not a position, but it was a calling and a mandate for such a time as this. So that's how I got into this. And one of my proudest moments is that every year since we've done this, we have Lupus Advocacy Day at the Capitol, where we wear purple capes. And the capes say Champion of Lupus. Well, do you know that the legislators wear the capes? And every year it has grown to over, I would say, 95% of the legislators, Republican, Democrats, independents, white, black, male, female, everybody wearing these capes for lupus. And this is the only time that they can actually say that they bring everyone together for a common cause, and no one has done this before. And this year, we had not only capes, but we had sunglasses. And I turned around, and the Speaker of the House, John Burns, had on his purple glasses.
Wow.
The thing that will always stand out to me is a couple of my colleagues came not only thanking for introducing them to lupus, but said, "You brought lupus to the Capitol."
Yeah.
When you can touch other people's lives and change a mindset or a behavior, that to me is my success.
I love that. Wow. What a way to start the conversation. First of all, just thank you for just sharing your story and being so open with something as heavy as lupus. I know people go through it, and it's a hard thing to have on your body, and to go to work and to still do your job well and be able to, articulate and advocate for others who we may not be seeing, and bringing that advocacy to a space and opening it up to everybody to learn about it. It's quite incredible, your story on the beach. I got my first political job on the beach.
Maybe we need to go to the beach more.
I interviewed on the beach.
See?
On the beach. I put on my mom's
Maybe that's your first book, On the Beach.
Sunday, on the beach. On the beach.
Through this experience of just being advocating, I was then invited to become part of the Emory Lupus Research Team. So I've been doing lupus research for now 16 years. So, I mean, what is the chances that you end up with a disease that you don't have much knowledge on,
right,
and you end up being a researcher for, and then you end up being an advocate for, and then you're a policymaker for. Right. So when God gives you something, you may not think your life is going in the way you thought.
Right.
You don't know what God has a plan. The best thing that happened for me in my life was getting lupus.
What a way to see God's plan for you. So you have been a huge advocate for healthcare, education, economic development. How do you see all of these issues intersecting with environmental justice in Georgia?
So one of the things that the intersection between, whether it's healthcare, whether it's workforce, housing, when we talk about environment, climate, all of the intersection is because these things are human rights.
Yeah.
They're a human value. We cannot live without clean water, soil, air. We cannot live healthy if we don't have access to medicine, education, transportation, working. We cannot have this. So the intersection starts when we have the acknowledgement that the earth and the world and environment fuels us. It's our life source.
Right.
And so everything we touch now is not just an ask, it's a human right necessity, and it's a mandate that we steward the things that are put in front of us well.
Absolutely. So within that human right, what challenges have you faced pushing forward progressive legislation, and how do you navigate opposition in the legislature, in the Georgia State Legislature?
Well, while it's a human right, and really, we're all humans, right?
Right,
human
absolutely.
Right.
Right.
Okay. We have a body that doesn't believe or support the climate change and the value of protecting the environment or environmental justice.
Right.
We have a body that of people that want to place emphasis on money and resources, right, on other things other than this, make this area of environmental justice, and especially progressive environmental justice bills and legislation and policies and actions, initiatives. They don't want to use the resources allocated to that. So it's been, while it's been progressive, because we know, again, we need everything like a water system that does not have the PFAS in it.
Right.
We need air quality, indoor and outdoor, better air quality. We need fighters and advocates that speak up. We do have a challenge in opposing to get these bills even heard on the House floor or acknowledge that this is a real issue. And I always like to say, until it hits your house, then that's when you want to start talking about, oh, let's save the planet. Okay, Captain Planet's been here way before you, baby.
Come on.
And so we have to realize that our time to make them hear this agenda is beyond now.
Right.
It's a mandate and a must.
Right.
So it's you're finding now that there is some willingness, but it's not being accepted readily to push us forward
Right.
at the pace that we need to. We're so behind.
Yeah.
And so that's because you didn't want the conversations, you didn't want the bills, you didn't want to take any action, you didn't want to put the money to it, but now we have no choice.
And it's affecting your
And
constituents.
now it's affected farming,
Yep.
it's affecting your livelihood, it's affecting everything that you're doing. Healthcare costs are going up because of the environment.
Yeah.
So now we have to do something. And so I've been not just waiting in line, just tapping and twiddling my thumbs. I've been pushing agendas and bills and positioning us, because these things matter to my community, even when they don't know that they matter.
Right, right. So speaking of bills that you're pushing and policies, what specific policies have you championed to address environmental protection and climate resilience in the state?
So one of the first that I keep redropping and refiling is the clean energy and looking at green jobs by 2050.
Yeah.
Every year, because we don't get the bills heard on the floor, I have to keep pushing the date out farther and farther. So I'm giving us enough time to create a sustainable infrastructure that supports environmental justice and really does favor what we need on a health continuum.
Right.
And so that's one of that bill is HR 67. The other bill that I've championed this year is HR 209, which is workplace safety and heat protection for workers, especially those that are working in warehouses. We have a heat problem here. You know, Georgia's pretty hot in the summertime. Ask my hair.
Right.
I'm natural hair because once I hit the humidity, then it becomes natural. But, you know, those kind of things, working with eradicating the forever chemicals in products, not such as consumer products, but again, in the drinking water, in cosmetics. So I have the Safe Cosmetics Act. I have Firefighter Act to look at how do we protect people that are in the space of public servants and the emergency and the firefighters, to make sure that they're getting tested for PFAS and things that are in removing the mercury that's in our water. You know, sometimes people will say, well, the levels are not that high, so they'll give you a pass.
Right.
But here's the thing.
It's in there.
It's in there. And if you have a chronic condition, you're getting medicines to work against things that are environmental triggers and not necessarily clinical formations or clinical things that are going on in your body. So we have to do that. Last thing I'll say is I learned about the need in the summertime in different parts of the city, the asphalt that people, the different grades of asphalt that are used in different parts of the city based on zip code. And so you may think that you're out there and you see the smoke rising up and you say it's hot. What it's doing is emitting toxins. Wow. Imagine the mother that's waiting at the bus, or the person waiting at the bus to go to work, and they're smelling this. But yet they now have asthma, they've got some respiratory problems, and the doctors are saying, oh, well, let me change your medication, not realizing it's asphalt.
Right.
So, you know, we're progressive enough to know that we've got to do something.
Right.
But we're ignorant enough to turn our heads and bury our heads in the sand.
Wow. That is such a great point, even to public service and firefighters and all of that. Going to put out fires and being in those, how the chemicals affect their bodies. Many of them become cancer patients eventually down the line. Some of them get dropped by their insurance provider, or their, you know, retirement doesn't really cover all of their insurance, and making policies that will make sure that when they do retire, if they, God forbid, get a disease that's connected to what they've been breathing in for years and years doing their job, that we, like our government, will be able to help pay for their medical bills, because it was from the job in which they did. Somebody got to put out the fires. Somebody has to show up when there's a gas leak. Somebody has to make sure the community is safe. And so as they're serving us, that we continue to serve them when they are no longer in service. through policies that we create. So
And
a
that's
huge
the
thing.
bill that we didn't get a hearing on that bill.
Yeah.
But it's something I'll continue to work and
Yeah.
push until it gets passed and makes it to the governor's desk.
Absolutely. So the 100% campaign advocates for a transition to 100% clean energy by 2050. 2050 is a very popular number for a lot of clean energy things because we see in the state of Georgia, 2050, that's a goal that we can hopefully reach in the next 25 years. So what do you see as the biggest barrier or the biggest barriers to achieving this goal in Georgia, and how can lawmakers help accelerate that progress?
I think one of the big is our time. We don't have as much time as we think. A lot of the legislators that are in the body aren't going to be here to 2050. So the priorities that we need to push forward when it comes to climate resilience and change and transition have to be made important enough to the state that we take action now. And that's what the legislators need to embrace, that I've got to push the agenda forward. I've got to be a stronger voice. I've got to work with the advocates, such as all the work that you do and the space that you do it. And GVC is just great that getting everything done.
GCV.
GCV.
It's okay.
I was
no,
like,
people,
yeah,
it's
GCV.
one of those. Yeah.
GCV and all the work that GCV does
Yeah.
in the space to champion these needs, to bring it to the legislators' attention, keep it in our face so that the legislators cannot say no. Make it too relevant to be ignored.
Right.
And so that's what I think that we have an opportunity to do in the space right now.
Right.
We hear from the advocates. It's the voice of the people that get things done. I like to say that I have the power of the pen, but the advocates have the power of the voice. And when the two can work in synergy and tandem, then we can see real change in this state. We can't just talk about it. We've got to have a correction action plan and then activate that action.
Right. Absolutely. So environmental justice is crucial for communities disproportionately affected by pollution and climate change. What steps can be taken to ensure that low-income and minority communities have equitable access to clean air, water, and energy?
So I would say the people, three things. We must be engaged. Okay, we don't have the luxury of standing back and allowing monies to go into other parts of the city and other communities when we have the issues that are not just plaguing us a lot more in under-resourced communities. And then we don't have access to health care or the type of transportation or the roads or the indoor air quality. Give you an example. I went to go get my tires rotated. And when I walked into that space, the smell of rubber was so overwhelming, I immediately got a headache. And so I left thinking, oh, maybe I'm just hungry. I came back a few minutes later to check on something, to sit in their waiting room. And all of a sudden, I started feeling like my lupus was starting to flare. My joints were getting achy. And I went to them and I said, let me ask you all a question. I was saying to the employees there, I said, how do y'all deal with this smell? And they said, you know what? It doesn't even bother us because we've been doing it so long, which is a natural answer. But I said, well, does anybody in here, have you seen a change in your respiratory? The guy said, yeah, before I started here, I didn't have asthma. Now I've had asthma. Someone else was started to say, what happens in those spaces when they've been in there for long periods of time and they're inhaling all of this? What happens to the average person that just goes in there to rotate their tires and now they're impacted by this? So yes, we have to look at every aspect of how the environment touches our lives. And lawmakers have a responsibility in their communities. In my community, in Fulton County, if you go through the number of tire shops that are here or automatic, look at the population that's being impacted that we don't stop and think about. So yes, you may live up north and not think that this is not your issue. But for me who lives down south, this is a real issue to us.
Issue, right. So speaking of issues and in a way to things that impact others, we have an enormous potential for solar energy. What policies or incentives do you believe are necessary to expand renewable energy adoption across the state?
So some of the policies that we're looking at when it comes to solar is, number one, the access and affordability. So those are two things that we need.
Solar,
The other thing is creating the workforce that we need. So there are policies that some of my colleagues across the aisle have written to try to make sure that there's affordability and not a monopoly on
Come on.
people
Yeah.
just trying to lock us out
Right, right.
of our or silence our voice in this area.
Right.
So I know that I've been working with a couple of legislators
Yeah.
that this is big on their agenda.
Right.
We should have sustainable solar powers in all these large buildings that we have. We should be looking at rooftop gardening. We should be looking at all sorts of ways to have food
Yeah.
to eradicate some of this food insecurity. I was in DC at a conference and it was almost like a vending machine where they were growing healthy food.
Yeah.
In that, why are we behind the eight ball? Why are we not looking at becoming innovative? We've got a number of farms down here that
Huge.
should be, so the solar farms that stop putting them in areas where we don't have access or you're locking us out of having capital.
Yeah.
There are some areas where they are given incentives and we are given grants.
Yeah.
No, we want equity across the board.
Right.
I have a bill that was for the minority farmers restoration office to create a space where more resources are equitable.
Yeah.
So it's time that we take the solar to a whole nother level. We're inviting it in, we're moving forward. We need to put more where it's accessible, affordable, and educate our communities, especially communities of color, the benefit.
Yeah. Thinking about putting solar, I really think something that we could probably push towards, and pretty quickly, especially in the city of Atlanta, is putting solar on our government buildings. I mean, think about how much light hits the Gold Dome. The Gold Dome is the capital, you guys. The Gold Dome shines. It is like the pinnacle of sunlight. Anytime the sun shines, it's going to hit that dome. So think about how we could power pretty much the entire Capitol and probably the Club as well.
Yes.
Just off of solar panels that we put on top of the Cloverdale building and the Capitol, which are right beside each other, that get like the most sunlight because it's at a peak point on our city map.
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to you and I, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Listen, I am still trying to get a water station in there. I was saying to them the other day, every time you turn around, there's somebody giving us a water bottle.
Right.
But yet we don't have a water stand or station in here that we can fill it, and I can't drink out of the water that's coming out of these pipes in these capitals.
Come on, because which is actually quite funny, not funny, because a lot of our schools in Georgia do have the reusable the water fountains in school.
Yeah.
They connected it to the water fountain, so it's very easy for us to incorporate that at the Capitol. It's easy, but it's not easy. You know what I'm saying?
But we should be the leaders. The Capitol should be leading on these initiatives.
Absolutely.
Put solar at the Capitol and let us see the results. And then we will be able to really focus on moving us to that transition state.
Right.
We have to take the lead in these areas.
Right.
And unfortunately, I don't think we've done a good job doing it. And I know we haven't, because obviously we haven't passed my bill yet of 2050. I'm going to give you by 2050 to pass this bill.
We've given Georgia some time, about 25 years, which is what we think is plausible.
How much more time do y'all think I have? The clock is ticking.
About 10 or 12 more legislative full biennial sessions.
That's dog years?
Right. So I think that would be a great path forward and something that we should start doing with a lot of our government buildings. It's a great way to
and that's where the voice of the advocates come, that if you take this on and you start champion, then we have to listen. You put us in these positions to represent your issue. Well, if we're not hearing from you, what happens to your issue, and I go present it, and I have to convince 91 people to get to vote to pass these issues out. If I'm the only one at the line champion, I can't get it done without you. So all of the advocates that are really trying to push solar, clean energy, green jobs, join the coalitions that are here. Let's not just create a movement. Let's move the mountain. Let's eradicate all these no's and start making people say yes. Find your yes at that Capitol.
Absolutely. So speaking of finding your yes and coming up to the Capitol, you've been a strong advocate for community engagement. How can everyday Georgians get more involved in advocating for climate action, environmental policy, and then even more so than that first step of coming up to the Capitol, what else do you think they could be doing?
Well, the first thing that I need them to do and need us to do is to know your legislator. So if you don't know who your legislator is, you have homework assignment. If you know anything about me, I always give you something to do. And so here's your homework assignment. Find your legislator. Your legislator may be not, I'm a state representative, so we're talking on a state level. Your legislator, you can find them at www.legis, that's legis.ga.gov. So that's legisga.gov. And you'll go to the first page, you scroll down, and it'll say, find my legislator. Click on that, put your addresses, and that will tell you who you are. The second step is to reach out to them, send them an email, follow them on their social media pages, call the office, and let them know who you are. If we don't know you, then we don't know how to help, and more importantly, you don't know what we do. The third thing is come to the Capitol. We meet from the second Monday in January until this session is going to end on April 4th. The Georgia Dome is called the People's House. And last I checked, the people on the other side of this mic are breathing, and they really are people. So if that's your house, the question I have for you is, when was the last time you came home to see what was going on in your house? Come find out who's making decisions on where you live, how much rent you pay, your insurance, your environment. Those are your responsibilities. So engagement is very important. Yes, you vote. Voting is the thing you're supposed to do to unlock the resources that we need from the federal to get to the state to help me meet the demands and the issues that we have in under-resourced communities. That's your job, is to go in and push the button to vote. When you don't do that, you tie our hands. But more than that, after you push the button, you don't stop there. We become partners and co-laborers, and we work together. And if you don't see your issue being met, we find coalitions that can help you. That's the resource end of it. So I need your help, your partnership. If we're a family, then let's really truly be a family and work on each other's issues.
Come on, family. So looking ahead, what are your top legislative priorities for next session? This session is about to come to a close in about 2.5 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And how do they align with your long-term vision for Georgia? I know you talked about HR 67 and reintroducing that and clean jobs. So what are the ones that you're going to take into next session, and even more that you'll expand upon? Okay,
so here's the issue with that question. I love that question. It's a great question, because this session, it's never been done before. The leadership made a decision that each legislator was only able to drop 10 bills. So there should not be a cap on the number of pieces of legislation we can file, because if you just think right now, you can think of 10 issues that are going on in your life right now that need to be addressed. More importantly, 10 bills or capping the number of bills for the work that can get done silences the voices of the constituent. What it means is that I'm elected, but the issues that you have cannot be brought to the floor or worked on, because you're saying I can only pick and choose what I need to get done. And as a Democrat, we're not in the minority, so we have to only pick and choose issues that matter. Well, we have housing, we have environmental justice, we have transportation, education, healthcare. But if I have bills that hadn't been filed or heard or passed last session, just like anybody else, when you have a to-do list and you don't finish your to-do list, what do? You take it over to the next day. Well, I have a long legislative to-do list. If you start passing some of our bills, maybe we would shorten the to-do list. So bills like HR 67 and other bills that didn't get out and didn't get heard and didn't get voted to the floor to pass, I have to keep bringing them back. But more importantly, as they shut us down in delivering and trying to curb your voice, you have to speak up and say, take the ban off the cap. Let the legislators do their job. There are too many issues that are going unnoticed that will never make it to the floor because you put a lid on us. So the bills that did not get passed this session, I will carry them over and go back for other bills. Their system didn't work to shut us down.
Yeah.
So I'll let you know clearly, I believe I have filed 67 bills already this session.
60.
So no does not mean no,
No.
to me. My family has a lot of needs that have gone unmet. And I'm going to continue to fight and champion all of the needs by any means necessary till we get to the finish line where there's equity, a great quality of life for all, health care for all, food deserts are not happening, maternal health deserts, medicine, financial debt, the list goes on. You see, that's more than 10 I can come up with right now. And you're saying no? No, state. It doesn't work for us.
Absolutely. It ain't gonna
So,
work.
it ain't gonna work.
It ain't gonna work.
Not today. So we're gonna keep filing the bills,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna keep pushing the agenda, and I'm gonna keep progressing
Yeah.
until we get, again, a fair and equitable platform and stance. And the people come out. The people drive this,
Right. Right.
not the legislators.
Absolutely. So on a futuristic thing, or an overall goal, if you could see one major environmental energy policy enacted in Georgia within the next 5 years, what would it be and why?
It would really be looking at, again, that sustainable energy and we making that transition
Yeah.
to renewables and the green jobs. We
Yeah.
have to create a workforce that is ready for what's to come.
Yeah.
So that would be the goal and my big dream that I know and I believe that we're going to hit it. It may take us small incremental steps, but overall, before we look, we're going to be at the finish line and they're going to turn around and say, how'd this happen? Oh, it's because the work was getting done
Was
when
put
you
in.
didn't even see it.
Right.
We're putting it in now. We're laying a foundation. And then like Harriet Tubman, by the time you got to the other side, I done gone back and got 5,000 more people and brought them over there.
Talk about it. So just, I have one last question for you, just to talk about overall, what do you want people to remember about you as a representative or as a person, as an advocate? What do you want to leave? When you leave this world, what would you like to leave behind?
So that's a great question.
Yeah.
So when I leave this world, you know, people always like to use the Bible quote and think, oh, I want the Lord to say, well done in my good and faithful
Hallelujah.
servant. I don't want all that.
Yeah.
I just want the word done. D-O-N-E. Done.
Done.
She came, done.
Okay, done. Yeah.
I want my legacy to be known as the acronyms in my name state, K-I-M, keep it moving.
Keep it moving. I love that. Well, thank you for keeping it moving with us.
Thank you. Thank you for
Today and
having me
joining us.
here. This was amazing.
Yes.
Again, thank you for the work. It's voices like yours and the people that listen that change and move a needle.
Yeah.
We don't have the luxury. We see things changing so rapidly and we sit back and we talk to our neighbors to complain. Your neighbors don't write policy. Your neighbors don't have access to things. Move beyond the complaining to the action. The action may take time. You may have to push. You may have to keep coming back. Every no they told me, I kept saying, somebody in this Capitol is going to tell me yes. And I'm going to keep on finding that person that's the yes. Don't lose hope because you are the answer to somebody's prayer. You're the answer to somebody's change. You're the answer to making a small deposit that has wonderful things. I am coming back from an event with the Goodwill of North Georgia. And when I got elected, I went to see them and I had a vision of having a Goodwill Career Center in my district. And went and talked to Mr. Keith Parker, sat down, got on board with the vision. It didn't happen overnight. It took probably about 4 years when we got it done. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because when I was talking to him recently, he said, do you know you've gotten over 10,000 people jobs with that career center being in there? Yeah. Had I given up because it was hard or somebody told me no, then think about how many people would not be serviced. Again, you're the answer to somebody's prayer. You're definitely the answer to somebody's prayer. But more importantly, you are here to change. Yeah. Yeah. One vision changed the world.
Absolutely.
Voices move mountains.
Yeah.
Imagine if we put those things together and put our hands to the plow, stay engaged, talk, get with the right folks. Imagine what we can do. Georgia is not driven by a governor or a legislative body. Georgia is still driven by the people.
By us. Yeah. I'll leave you guys with this quote because it touches on something that she kind of touched on in that spiel. Um, it says the difference between you and the person that you admire is that they kept going and didn't stop. And so the people that we admire, people like Rep. Schofield, she kept going and she has not stopped, no matter the no's that she has received. And so I want to encourage you guys today to keep going. Don't stop. Do not give up in the fight, because somebody is benefiting from you sticking up and not just letting the no be a no and turning that no into a yes eventually. So keep going. Thank you for joining us today on the Greater Greener Georgia podcast. It has been a blessing to talk to you and to pour into you guys today. Thank you.